Man wakes up one night to the sound of his young son screaming. Gets up, rushes into his room, sees the boy wide awake and terrified. Says, "Son, what's the matter? You okay?" Says, "Dad, I just had the most terrible dream. I dreamed Grandpa died." He says, "Son," he says, "a nightmare is just a dream." He says, "That's all." He says, "I think everything's okay. I think Grandpa's okay. Try and go back to sleep, and I think everything will be all right." Lo and behold, next morning, family gets a phone call. Grandpa passed away. And family said, "Well, it's just one of life's coincidences, and these things happen sometimes." So the next night, again, boy wakes up screaming. Dad gets up, rushes into his room, sees the boy wide awake and terrified. He goes, "Son, are you okay? You having another nightmare?" He goes, "Yes, Dad." He says, It's happening again." He said, "I dreamed Aunt Sarah died." He said, "I'm scared." He says, "Son," he says, "I think it was just a coincidence, again, that you had another nightmare." He says, "Try and go back to sleep. I'm sure Aunt Sarah's okay. We'll call her tomorrow to make sure." Lo and behold, next morning, they get a phone call. Aunt Sarah passed away. And so everything goes along fine for a couple of weeks. No more incidents. Then one night, boy wakes up screaming again. Dad gets up, rushes into his room, sees the boy white as a ghost, terrified and shaking. Says, "Son, is it another nightmare?" He goes, "Oh, Dad, I'm so happy you're okay." He goes, "Why, son?" He says, "I dreamed you passed away." He goes, "Son, I'm standing right here." He says, "I'm going to do everything I can to take care of myself and to live to a ripe old age, so I'm there for you. So go back to sleep. I think we'll be okay." But this really scared the dad when he went back to bed. And he thought, he says, "I got to get through tomorrow to make sure everything's okay." So when he goes to work, he drives slower than slow. Every precaution. Doesn't stand near any open windows. Doesn't walk under anything. This man is the epitome of caution. He gets through his work day, drives home, everything's fine. Goes in the house, his wife is home from work. And he goes, "Oh, honey," says, "I was so scared today because of what our son said last night when he had a dream." He says, "I've done everything in my power to make sure I come home to him and you, and that we can live on." And she goes, "Dear," he says, "I understand." She says, "I appreciate all your caution." Said, "But the weirdest thing happened. When I come home, sure as hell, the mailman was dead on the porch."